We are going to dig into conservation, and we're going to talk about what it is, things to consider when you're selecting materials for conservation treatment, and what to expect when you're working with a professional conservator. So what is conservation? So it is defined by the Society of American Archivists as the, quote, repair or stabilization of materials through chemical or physical treatment to ensure that they survive in their original form as long as possible. So this means conservation is not the same thing as restoration. Restoration is the process of rehabilitating an item to return it as nearly as possible to its original condition. Conservation is simply stabilizing an item so that it can survive into the future, where restoration is trying to return something to its original state, condition, or appearance. So as noted in the Society of American Archivists Dictionary of Archives terminology, that definition we just looked at, conservation does not always eliminate evidence of damage. Restoration includes techniques to return materials to their original appearances. So this may be like fabricating missing pieces. So this is evidence of conservation treatment. So the damaged document has been fused with a lightweight paper to support the structure of the document. But this is not restoration because the evidence of the repair is visible. The text that is lost is not there. And restoration treatment maybe would have used paper attempting to match the paper of the document. Maybe it would have attempted to recreate some of the writing so that the document looked close to what it would have looked like when it was created. But in this conservation treatment, the goal was simply to just stabilize the damaged areas of the paper to provide support and then attempt to prevent further damage to those weakened areas. But conservation is also not the same as preservation. So preservation is the broad action of just generally protecting your historical materials from deterioration, from damage. But conservation is specific, specialized, hands-on treatment to stabilize a particular item. So preservation is just the general protection of materials through many different activities, which is everything that we've talked about today so far. So that means setting up a stable storage environment, having security policies in place, implementing safe handling practices, planning for disasters, housing things in boxes. All of that is general protection, preservation of your materials. Conservation is that specialized treatment of one particular item. So when you are considering conservation treatment for your holdings, you need to set priorities for which items will get treated first. So when you're prioritizing, consider several factors. How much use does the item get? Is it handled a lot? Is it exhibited frequently? If something gets a lot of use, it may need to be conserved to stabilize it so that it can survive into the future. But if there's surrogate copies available, so maybe there's photocopies or you have digital versions of the material, conservation of the original may not be as necessary because the copies can be handled instead. You may want to consider the value of the item. So value can be monetary, but there's other types of value. If it's only the information in the item that's valuable, then it may not need to be conserved since there's other ways to capture that information. So again, in those copies, you can capture that information in transcripts, those sorts of things. But sometimes the physical item itself is important because maybe it's rare or its historical context or where it came from is really significant. Maybe it belonged to someone important to your organization or it's the original example of something. So if the item itself is valuable in itself, that would increase its priority for conservation. And finally, you need to determine if the item, once treated, will be stored in an environment that can keep it protected. So if an item's conserved but goes back to storage in a hot attic or humid basement, it's probably not worth the cost of treating the item, because the storage environment will then continue to degrade it. It's really, really important to do the other preservation activities to stabilize storage conditions before spending the money on item level conservation treatment. So you've set your priorities, and maybe you do have something that you want to have conserved. You're ready to work with a conservator, but where can you find one? So when looking for a conservator, first start with who you know. Ask for referrals from other local cultural heritage organizations, other types of organizations like yours that maybe have had materials conserved. You can also contact the Vermont Historical Society, special collections departments at Vermont colleges and universities, or reach out to us here at the Vermont Historical Records Program for referrals. You can also reach out to the Collections Care and Conservation Alliance, or the CCCA. You can also search in the American Institute for Conservation's Find a Conservator tool. So conservators often deal with clients who are not local. So they do know how to safely pack and ship fragile materials to and from their studios. So you may find that you're working with someone who maybe is not based in the state or even close to where your organization is located. It is important to note that conservators are very highly specialized, and there's conservators for all different types of materials and formats. So there are conservators for paper, for textiles, for metal, glass, everything in between. So you may not be able to use one for different types of documents. You might have to work with two different conservators if you have two different types of things that you would like to have conserved. When you begin working with a conservator, they will ask you some questions about the item you want treated, such as what it's made out of, what the problem is, how the item is stored, and what the environmental storage conditions are like, and what you're hoping to get out of the treatment. So after reviewing your responses, the conservator will likely provide a general assessment of what can be done. So remember that this first conversation is also your opportunity to get more information. So you can ask the conservator questions about their training and experience and make sure that they're the right fit for you. If you decide to work together, the conservator will then need to see the item and will perform a more detailed assessment. And that person will then provide you with a treatment proposal that talks about the options that you have for treatment, as well as the timeline and the cost for each of those options. And some conservators may charge a fee for this assessment portion of the process. When a decision has been reached about how to treat, the conservator will go forward with that treatment. And then after that treatment has been completed, the conservator should provide you with a final report that details the techniques and the materials used in the treatment, photographs of before and after conditions, and any recommendations for special handling of the item going forward into the future. And you want to make sure that you hold onto this report permanently. It's really important information for your organization about what's been done to the item. It can be useful in the future for researchers who are interested in the physical nature of the item. And if you ever have to get conservation on it done again, another conservator in the future would want to know what treatments have been done in the past. So a conservator should operate by the following principles. Do no harm, which means avoid using materials that could actually cause damage to the item. Less is better. So sometimes limited treatment or no treatment at all is better. Also, treatments should be reversible. And while repairs should be in the same style as the item, the repair should be apparent. The goal is not to mislead anyone into thinking that the item was never damaged. So to learn more about how to choose and work with a conservator, you can see the Northeast Document Conservation Center's leaflet at the link here. And keep in mind that there could be some basic care work that you do in-house without contacting or contracting with a conservator. If you have paper records with dirt or dust that can easily be brushed off, you could get a gentle brush and do it yourself. You can carefully remove damaging fasteners like rusty paper clips from materials. And if you have fragile books, you can create your own custom boxes and storage enclosures to protect the items. So you can find more information about how to perform all of these activities. Again, the Northeast Document Conservation Center, the link's here on the screen. If you have any doubt about whether you should perform an activity yourself, contact a conservator before you start. And you can also contact us here at the VHRP with questions. So we can travel with equipment, we can help you check your light levels, we can monitor your storage area's environmental conditions, as I mentioned before, and we can help remediate inactive mold. So there are important things to remember when you're considering conservation. Remember that conservation is not the same thing as restoration or preservation. It is simply the act of stabilizing materials so that they can survive into the future. Know that you cannot conserve everything because it's very expensive and not everything needs the same level of treatment. You really do have to prioritize which of your materials warrant that level of treatment, that conservation. Working with a conservator is an ongoing process, so you'll be in contact with them at different stages during the process. Remember, there's some very basic things that you can do in-house to preserve the life of your materials. And it's always better and always more cost-effective to put your resources towards general preservation activities, such as improving the housing of your storage materials, or improving the environmental conditions of the storage area. It's always better to put more money towards those things rather than to spend money on conservation treatment. You really get more bang for your buck to focus on the preservation envelope, this building, and you're going to work to improve the longevity of all of your materials instead of spending money on a very select few.